So you want to learn French? But how hard is it? In this video, I am going to give you an honest take on this question, based on both my experience as a French native and from years of teaching students just like you. Bonjour! My name is Morgan. I'm a certified teacher from France, and I've devoted my career to teaching English in France and French in the USA. Well, stick around until the end because I will give you some fundamental tips that will truly make your French learning journey a success. So is French actually that hard to learn for English speakers? Well, let's bust the myth. French isn't as foreign to English speakers as you might think. In fact, English is, according to Georges Clemenceau, nothing more than poorly pronounced French. I say that to someone who loves English. It's my favorite language. But the truth is, French and English are closer than people think. You might wonder how. Well, back in 1066, William the Conqueror crossed the English Channel and defeated the English during the Battle of Hastings. He became King of England and he imposed French as the language of the British Kingdom. And for centuries, English nobility spoke French. That's why over 65,000 words have French origins. That's about 1/3 of the English language. That's how porc became pork, bœuf became beef, souverain became sovereign, and forain became foreigner. And there are so many other words that are almost identical in both languages. Un animal, an animal. Un restaurant, a restaurant. Impossible, impossible. Bleu, blue. And even though the pronunciation changes slightly, many of these words are immediately recognizable to French learners. So right off the bat, you're really not starting from scratch. You already know more French than you think. So what is hard about French? From my experience, I get that pronunciation can be a little bit tricky, but it's manageable once you understand a few patterns. First of all, we have more vowels in French. A, E, I, O, U, Y. And we also have vowel combinations that will create sounds like O, U, U, A, U, O, E, I, E, U, E. And we also have those accents. For example, the E accent aigu, E accent grave. You know, those little E's with the little accents on it. And once you get used to it, it's going to unlock so many things for pronunciation. But I know we also have that R sound. R. And this is a sound that does not exist in the English language. So you'll need to train your mouth a little bit. But don't worry, it's just like learning to whistle or roll your tongue. It takes practice, but it does come. Another thing that surprises learners is how spoken French blends words together, meaning that for most French learners, French is so fast. For example, je vais au cinéma, I go to the cinema, is going to turn into je vais au cinéma. Instead of je vais au cinéma, je vais au cinéma. My name is Morgan, je m'appelle Morgan is going to turn into je m'appelle Morgan. And for example, je ne sais pas, I don't know, is going to turn into je sais pas. So it is a little bit different from spoken French to written French. So yeah, getting used to how French sounds is probably the biggest challenge. But it's a challenge you can overcome easily because all you have to do is listen. And don't worry, I will share a great beginner-friendly resource at the end of the video. Let's talk about French conjugations. Are they scary? Let's be honest. Yes, French verbs have more tenses and more endings than the English language. In English, verbs are pretty straightforward. I dance, you dance, she dances, we dance, they dance. Pretty easy, right? In French, the endings change a little bit more. Je danse, I, tu danses, IS, il, elle danse, I, nous dansons, ONS, vous dansez, easy, il danse, ENT. But there's a good news here, and maybe you've already noticed it. In spoken French, most of these verb forms are pronounced the same. So while the spelling might look a bit complicated, the way you actually say the verb is often simpler than what you think. And also, what you have to keep in mind is that a lot of advanced tenses aren't even used in daily spoken French. So you really don't have to learn all the forms to start speaking comfortably. So we've mentioned a little bit of spelling, right? Well, yes, spelling can be also a little bit tricky in French. French spelling is not phonetic, just like English. What's tricky in French is that we have a lot of silent letters. Here's the 3 main types of silent letters. So the first one is what we call the silent E. We're not going to pronounce it. For example, une table, we're not going to say une table, une table, une plante, and not une plante, une pomme, and not une pomme. And we also have silent consonants with S, T, D, P, X, and Z. So if you have words ending with those consonants, you're not going to pronounce it either. For example, gris and not grise, chat and not chat, grand and not grande, loup and not loup, prix and not prix, ne and not nes. One thing you really have to remember is that, let's say, 90% of the time in French, we never pronounce the last letter. And finally, we have that silent H. The H sound doesn't exist in French, so it's here just to be pretty. For example, homme and not home, or hôtel and not hotel. And remember, mispronouncing or misspelling a word isn't the end of the world. People will still understand you. Next thing that I get a lot from my students is, how am I supposed to know if a table is either feminine or masculine? Yeah, gendered nouns. One of the most frustrating parts for beginners. Every French noun is either masculine or feminine, and you'll need to use the right article. For masculine, un or le, for feminine, une or la, and for plurals, de or les. But there's some good news here too. Nouns that end with an I are most of the time feminine. Une pomme, une porte, une chaise, la géographie. All of these nouns end with an I and they're all feminine. So I would say that this works maybe 80 to 85% of the time. So if you're not sure and the noun ends with an I, then just try feminine. Over time, your brain will start to feel what sounds right. Now, the real tricky thing about those gender nouns is that we also gender adjectives. We actually tune our adjectives with our nouns. The annoying thing about that is that we do have irregular adjectives. For example, the adjective beautiful is not going to be pronounced the same way for either feminine or masculine. When it's feminine, we're going to say belle, and when it's masculine, we're going to say beau. We do have adjectives that are irregulars, just learn the more common ones. But most of the time, adjectives follow a regular pattern. All you have to do to make an adjective feminine is to add an I at the end. Blond becomes blonde, français devient française, grand devient grande. And if you mess up and use the wrong gender, then guess what? It's not a big deal. You will still be understood. But the more you listen, the more natural it'll become to get it right. So is French really that hard to learn? The honest answer? It depends. It depends on you, your background, your mindset, and the approach you choose. If you've already learned another language, you'll probably find French easier to pick up because you already know how language learning works. If French is your first foreign language, then it might take a little bit more time, and that's totally normal. Motivation is obviously key. If you're motivated by travel, by work, by love, by culture, whatever your reason, that will carry you through the tough moments. And then comes time. How much time can you actually dedicate to learning? It doesn't need to be hours a day, but it does need to be consistent. Even 15 minutes a day is powerful if you do it every day. And finally, the tools and methods you're going to be using will make a huge difference. Some ways of learning are simply more efficient than others. And that brings me to my next point. If there's one approach I truly believe in and that I would recommend to anyone is comprehensible input. It's the method I've been using a lot during my Fulbright scholarship in the USA when I was teaching French. And it completely transformed the way my students learned French, especially beginners. So how does it work? It's very simple. We learn languages by understanding messages, not by memorizing lists or drilling grammar rules. Think about how you learned your first language. You didn't start with grammar worksheets. You listened, you watched, you guessed the meaning in context, and then one day you started speaking. That's the idea behind comprehensible input. You listen to French that is just above your level. You understand it because it's slow, clear, and contextual, and your brain starts acquiring the language naturally. It's immersive without being overwhelming. It's especially powerful for pronunciation and vocabulary because you're always hearing and seeing words in action in real conversations or stories. And the best part, it's enjoyable. You don't really feel like you're studying. You're just watching or listening to something you understand. I've included a link in the description to a platform I have built using that method. There's a free trial, and right now there's also a limited time offer for lifetime access if you want to commit long term. So before I let you go, I want to give you my 4 honest tips from me as a teacher to you. After years of teaching languages, I've noticed some patterns. Whether someone succeeds or gives up usually comes down to a few key things. Number 1 is make sure you actually want to learn French. I know it sounds a little bit stupid or obvious, but it's important. A lot of people like the idea of learning French, but they don't really have a reason to stick with it. You don't need to have a perfect reason. Maybe you're planning a trip. Maybe you love French cinema. Maybe it's just something you've always wanted to do. But if you're not genuinely motivated, it'll be hard to stay consistent. So take a moment and ask yourself, why do I want to learn French? If you've got a real reason, reason, even a small one, you're already on the right track. Number 2 is make a plan, even a small one. Don't just say, I want to learn French. Decide how you'll do it. Set realistic, meaningful goals. Here's some examples. I'm going to listen to French 15 minutes a day. I want to learn the 200 most common words in French. I want to be able to introduce myself and talk about what I do for a living. And why does that matter? Because when your goals are specific and doable, you start seeing progress. And when you feel progress, you stay motivated. Number 3 is start right away. Don't wait. This might be the most important one. Don't wait until next week. Don't wait until you find that perfect app or finished your current Netflix series. Just start. Even if you're just listening to a 5-minute French video today, that's progress. That's momentum. A lot of people spend more time planning how to learn a language than actually learning it, and don't fall into that trap. Remember, consistency beats perfection, always. My final tip is to avoid being too passive and start speaking early. So don't get me wrong, don't start by speaking, because you do need to learn how the language sounds before pronouncing. Makes sense, right? So once you've listened to enough French and your ears are used to how it sounds, it's time to speak. Even if it feels scary. You don't have to jump into full conversations, obviously. You can even start with crosstalk if you have a partner, meaning you speak English and your partner is answering in French. It's way more engaging that way. It's low pressure, but still gets your brain working. And then when you feel ready, start speaking French. Speaking is usually the end goal for most people, but if you put it off for too long, it starts to feel like this scary big mountain that you'll never be able to climb. So speak early, speak often, make mistakes. That's how fluency happens. So is French hard to learn? Maybe. But is it too hard to learn? Absolutely not. With the right method, the right mindset, and just a bit of consistency, you'll be surprised how far you can go. Thanks for watching. If this helped, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and check out the resources in the description. À très bientôt. Mouah! Énorme bisous. Salut!